Let me just say, here's my big problem with the Trump tariffs and talk about becoming the 51st state. It has sucked all the oxygen out of the room, taken all the attention away from problems that will have a far bigger impact on most Canadians' lives than the Trump tariffs and our retaliation. I mean, think about it. Do you really think that the Trump tariffs are going to impact you more than the decline of Canadian healthcare? Well, certainly not if you're waiting for a medically unacceptable time to see a specialist after referral, the longest among developing nations. Or a family member was one of the 32,000 plus who died waiting for a diagnostic scan or surgery in the last 2 years. Or if you had a desperate need for emergency health care only to find that your ER was closed and you're one of the 1.3 million Canadians who were forced to leave the ER without getting treatment last year. Or maybe you're one of the 6 million plus Canadians who don't have a family doctor. I mean, do you really think that the Trump tariffs or anything else he does is the most important issue for the 2 million Canadians forced to use food banks? But no talk of that now. And seemingly no understanding that Canada's response to the US tariffs with our own retaliatory tariffs increases the cost of living for every Canadian, including the half of the population who an MNP survey found are $200 or less away from being unable to meet their monthly financial obligations, or maybe the 48% of Canadians identified in the RBC survey that can't maintain their standard of living. We have 43% of the Canadians under 44 who are actually borrowing money for necessities. Well, no talk of them now. But then again, I guess the government never did talk about them. And instead, the Prime Minister, Trudeau, made statements like this on CNN in January saying that the Canadian economy is doing great. Well, certainly not for a huge chunk of Canadians. I mean, do you think, though, that the Trump tariffs is a big issue for the millions of Canadians struggling with the lack of affordable housing and rent? Because that issue has dropped off the radar thanks to all the focus on Donald Trump. I mean, the US tariffs and the Canadian response are big issues, but the degree to which they've taken the focus away from other more pressing issues, well, it suited the Liberal government. Come on, because realistically, they couldn't run for re election based on their economic or financial record. Now, suddenly, people, including every Liberal MP and partisan supporter who have ignored Canada's bleak economic performance for the last decade, are only too happy to shift that focus to Donald Trump. But that doesn't make the cost of living crisis, the broken healthcare system, or the lack of affordable housing disappear. Hey, by the way, and who bears the brunt of it all? Lower income and struggling middle class Canadians. And what about the climate agenda? Well, who do you think has been hardest hit by the past decade by climate policies? Was it lower income and struggling middle class Canadians, or the well connected political insiders who cashed in on billions in government green energy funding? Of course, it's low income and struggling middle class. They certainly don't want to talk about that. So instead, the pivot to Trump. Because at the end of the day, it's not really about cost of living or economic growth or shrinking value of the Canadian dollar. No, it's about power. Or to put it bluntly, I think it's just a redux of the old establishment versus the rest of us.